Hi, I'm Gary, and I'd like to share with you what happened when I went from a raw food diet to when I added whole grains to my diet. I think someone might benefit from this. Someone needs to hear this. And it may not be you, but I hope you stick with me for a few minutes here. So in 2018, I'd been eating raw for about 10 years. Some of that time was mostly raw, 70-80%. One year of that time, right after we found out we had Lyme disease, we were 100% raw for a whole year. Not a bite of cooked food. Well, maybe one bite. Anyway, since that year of 100% raw, I continued on, and for 3 or 4 years, pretty much completely raw. On the weekends, I might have a little bit of cooked food. But during those 10 years of raw, I really didn't eat grains. Refined grains, whole grains, any kind of grains. I didn't believe they were necessary. I used to laugh at people who did think they were necessary. We were going to a raw food group once, and a lady we know asked if we could give her a ride, and we did. And she mentioned that she ate brown rice every day, and we thought that was quite ridiculous, really, because we didn't think grains were necessary. Raw food was raw fruits and vegetables and nuts and that kind of thing was enough. Anyway, after about 10 years of raw, I was driving a lot, and so my breakfasts and suppers were on the road as I was driving, and lunch was in my car at my workplace, and so I could choose what I wanted to eat, and I thought the raw food diet was just fine, and I stuck with it. And but I remember a friend visiting, and I remember thinking, he seems pretty healthy, and I'm not feeling very well. I just don't feel very good. And at work, I was sneezing quite a bit. I mean, I was noticing it at work. Coworkers were noticing it and asking if I was allergic to something, if there were unusually high pollen counts or something I was allergic to. But as far as I could tell, it wasn't really something airborne. It wasn't a high pollen season. I just didn't know why I was sneezing so much. Also, my legs were swelling. Toward the end of the day, 4 o'clock or so, my shoes would start feeling tight. My ankles were swelling, and my feet, and it was causing my shoes to feel tight. And that was happening every day. And when I go home, if I would take a shower, when I took my clothes off, took my socks off, the line where the socks ended and the rest of my calf began, there was a distinct bulge. It was embarrassing. I didn't even want to show my wife, and I didn't. But I would say possibly a ½ an inch or so of swelling there at the sock line. So also my stomach just didn't feel very good. Just kind of a general feeling of not feeling good. I was in a thrift store one day. I saw a waffle iron, and I used to make years ago, 20, 30 years, 40 years ago, I used to make waffles. I would just blend up oats and water and salt, and especially if I let the batter sit in the fridge for a few hours, oh my, it would make the lightest, most crispy, delicious waffles. I would eat it like bread. And so in the thrift store I saw a waffle iron, and I thought, I think I should get a waffle iron and try some oat waffles. And I did, and oh my, it seemed like my body was craving that. And so 3 meals a day I was having oat waffles. And almost immediately I noticed, hope you don't mind me talking about this, not everybody does, but my bowel movements they had been kind of loose and of quite a bit of quantity, and they became smaller and formed, not constipated, but firm. And to me, they seemed normal. They seemed like they had gone from loose bowel movements to normal bowel movements, and that was very noticeable. Another thing I experienced was it seemed like my body was holding on to electrolytes better after I started eating grains, whole grains. When I would eat dulse, dulse is a seaweed that's very popular in the raw food community. It's one of the more tasty seaweeds. Not everybody likes seaweeds, but of any of them, dulse is popular because it tastes pretty good, depending on your preference. A lot of raw food people like it. So I would eat 2 or 3 spoonfuls of dulse every day, and I would just put them in my mouth and chew them and eat them, and they didn't taste too salty at all. Not long after I started eating whole grains, whole oats in my waffles 3 times a day, the dulse began to taste very salty. If I would eat a spoonful of dulse, I would need to follow it by some fruit or something that was juicy and not salty. And it just seemed to me like my body was hanging on, was able to retain salt and electrolytes better. When I did some mineral taste tests, that showed also that it seemed that how do you put it? The mineral taste test, the premise is that if you need that mineral, it'll taste good. If you have plenty of that mineral, it won't really taste good. It might taste like you're just drinking water when you drink the water that has that mineral in it. And so I noticed on the taste testing that my need of minerals was less, as if my body was hanging on to them and utilizing the minerals and not just dumping them in the urine. The other thing that I noticed was about 8 months after adding whole grains to my diet, I noticed my toenails, and there was the area where the new growth of toenails was much healthier looking, and the part that was older, that was about 8 months old it didn't look very good, as you can see in the picture. So that's my experience with whole grains and raw food. I'm a big advocate of raw food. I think it's a wonderful thing, and I think that's the way our first parents ate in the Garden of Eden. I don't believe they had ovens or cooking equipment there. And I believe it's the way we're designed to eat. But things have changed, and in our experience, it's not easy to get grains in a raw state. Possibly buckwheat can be used. I've seen it used in crackers, raw or sprouted or partially sprouted. Other grains can be sprouted. We tried sprouting some grains and eating them, and it seemed like there was still quite a bit of uncooked complex carbohydrate in the grain, even when we sprouted the grain. And we seem to have a hard time digesting complex carbohydrates that haven't been cooked. Maybe not everybody does, but that's a difficulty we found with trying to eat grains while on a raw food diet. Corn, sweet corn, when it's young and sweet, corn is a grain, and I love corn on the cob when it's young and sweet. I could see our first parents eating that kind of thing in the garden. There may have been other grains that were that way, that were delicious in what they call the milk state, before they're very mature and dried. Many grains the complex carbohydrate will turn into sugar. That's the way it works with corn. The complex carbohydrates turn into sugar, and at the sweetest point, corn on the cob is very, very sweet. It doesn't have to be cooked, as you may have found. And other grains are the same way. They reach a peak of sweetness where the complex carbohydrates have pretty much all turned into simple carbohydrates, and they're quite tasty. I have a friend who grew up in a country where they grow rice, and she has tasted rice in the milk state, in that state where the high simple carbohydrate state, and she said it was delicious. So that's my experience, and if you have some comments, please add them. I'd like to explore this subject. So have a great day.